Do you think the Millennium Development Goal of getting every child to complete a quality primary education by 2015 is achievable?
I do. I think there's a problem in some areas where there's conflicts. And so where there's civil wars or there is fighting and where there's just a breakdown in society, then it's difficult for schools even to function. And I know that we've got a lot to do in a number of countries, but I do think it's possible, and I do think if we could send a message around the world that every child, every single child has a chance of schooling, then it's not only fair, but it says that we stand for something together.
Well, I hope it will be achieved. It is a tough target. The good thing about the Millennium Development Goals is that everyone is signed up to meeting them. And so there's a clarity there. What we need is, along with the clarity, is the political will that countries and leaders say, yes, we're going to do this, yes, we're going to provide the funding, yes, we're really going to put our shoulder to the wheel and make it happen. But as I said, I think the difficulty we now face is some of the barriers we've got to get over, like, disability. Those sorts of barriers are harder to push at, but you've got to keep pushing.
I think it's completely achievable if we maintain our ambition. I don't think it's an option. It's not a sort of luxury that we can afford to ignore. It's an absolute necessity. If we want to live in a better world, if we want to live in a world with greater fairness, where we want to give millions of children just an opportunity to live a half-normal life compared to what we're used to in rich countries, then I think it's the bare minimum that we should be aiming at. But yes, we need to maintain the ambition to want to do it and to take the difficult decisions to make it happen.
The number of children out of school worldwide is not falling as fast as in previous years. What do you think are the reasons for this?
We've got to do better. In the last few years, probably 40 million children have got to school, but there are still more than 70 million children who don't go to school. And that's so unfair to the children. It's a waste for our society, and it's something we can do something about. So we put more money in to make possible us to get more children into school by 2010, and then by 2015 to meet the goals. We've got to persuade some other countries to help us as well. But I know that President Obama has said that once he becomes president, he wants to do more for education in Africa and in the developing world.
I think if we look at the difficulties we have now, we've got to look at things like the quantity of war and instability. Obviously, refugee children have more problems getting education. We've got to look at things like language barriers. I think also there's quite a lot of problems with stigmas about people who have disabilities, stigmas about educating young girls and women. Deal with those things, and I think we can crack it.
I think the main reasons are that we've had this very sharp increase over the last year or so in basic costs. World food prices have gone up. Oil prices have gone up, so basic things like fuel to heat your home, putting food on the table, feeding your children, all of that has become even more difficult. And that, of course, means that it's even more difficult for them to find the time, the money to get their children into school.
How much has Britain contributed during the last 12 months? And how much do we intend to contribute during the next coming months?
We're talking about £8.5 billion over 10 years. So it's a lot of money, which is just under £1 billion every year. So we should help to get hundreds of thousands of children into school in the coming year.
What changes would you make in regards to the Millennium Development Goal on education if your party got into office?
Well, first thing is what will we keep the same, and that is all parties in Britain have signed up to 0.7% of our national output going into the overseas development budget by 2013. I think also it's really important that all the money we give to developing countries is absolutely laid out in detail, broken down to small amounts so everyone can see how much money is going where. It really helps if the parents of a school in rural Kenya know how much money they're getting, and then they know if it doesn't arrive that something has gone wrong. So transparency and fighting corruption is extremely important, and we put an enormous amount on that.
Well, obviously we would continue to work internationally with other countries to make sure that the resources are there to make this commitment something that is practical. But I think we also need to start thinking about what we do with those people who haven't enjoyed a primary education in the first place, adults who might want to actually start learning again, who perhaps don't even have basic literacy, basic numeracy. And we need to think about what we do with the children who do get a primary education, what happens to them next. So that's how we would meet the goals, but also start broadening them as well.
What do you think are the main things that need to happen to ensure that this goal is met?
Train teachers, build classrooms, get all the teaching materials that are necessary. And it's very important that girls get chances, because traditionally there's been more opportunities for boys and girls don't get the chance of education, and that's really important that girls also get the chance of education. So all these things have to be done to make possible the education transformation we want to see.
We need to make sure that developed countries, keep up their supply of aid and make sure that they go on funding the programmes they're funding, even though there are economic difficulties in the Western economies. We need people to repeat their commitment to the Millennium Development Goals, and we need the political will, both in developed countries and in developing countries, to make sure that we actually deliver what everyone has promised.
I think the main thing is to pursue all the Millennium Development Goals at the same time. I think what we sometimes forget is that they're all linked. You know, there's an intimate link between poverty and being able to send your child to school. There's a link between making sure that people can afford their fuel, can afford their food, can live in a secure environment where the rule of law means something. All of these things are linked.
Do you think the global campaign for education and pupils like us getting involved makes any difference to the number of children getting a chance to go to school?
Yeah, because you're sending a message around the world that it's important. So every campaign and every individual who participates in the campaign can make a difference. And I think the Global Campaign for Education has done a tremendous job, and I think you should be very proud of your involvement in that, from the time that we together met Nelson Mandela to now, when you've maintained your interest and your determination to give young people, every young person, the chance.
Yes, because it raises awareness. You know, you have to remember that in politics, all issues are fighting for the attention of the media, fighting for the attention of politicians, fighting for the attention of the world. And the more you can have campaigns like yours saying this is the issue that matters, getting young people into school all over the world, the more you'll get funding for it, the more you get attention for it, and the more that can happen. So I think it is very important.
I think it makes a massive difference. I think you should be incredibly proud of what you're doing. And I know from spending a lot of time in schools up and down the country, talking to school children in my own constituency in Sheffield who are part of this ongoing campaign to force political leaders to honour their commitments to meet the Millennium Development Goals, that it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference if us politicians know that you're watching. That's what a democracy is about. It's about people putting pressure, keeping politicians straight by saying, look, you promised to do this, now go away and do it. And I think the way you're going about it really is a perfect example of precisely the way to put pressure on government and politicians of all parties to do the right thing.